Nanda, you actually, I thought SAP was a highly metrics-oriented organization, and you heard Divakar just now saying that we've taken metrics to affine this thing. So, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I think there are two ways in which we can look at performance. For one, the process itself, the goals set should be measurable, should be achievable, drive performance in the way we want to, looking at probably the shorter and the medium term. But I think beyond that, I think the need of the hour is to build inspired, intensely performance-driven, achievement-oriented organizations. I think everything that we do in HR, starting from things like development and capability building, careers, succession planning, talent mapping in the way we do that, and how we involve employees in that process, I think all of that really leads to a high-performance culture. And, the shift should be towards enabling that performance. The drivers of performance, knowing what it is, and then driving it in a far more holistic manner.
Metrics.
Metrics are important. Metrics actually are important from the point of view of sustaining some consistency in the way we would look at performance across a spectrum. And, there are multiple functions, roles in an organization, and you need to be very clear about how you want to drive each individual in those roles and functions, and somewhere it needs to add up to what the organization as a whole wants to do. So metrics is a means. Metrics is really a tool through which you achieve the larger objectives of the organization. And I think, you need to work on two fronts, both the culture and the methods, which you will use to drive more immediate needs of performance.
So, Mr. Ghosh, you had a long innings in RBI. So, I want to know what you have to say about, metrics. I mean, did RBI have metrics to assess people, and how did you?
No, let me put it across. I think we tried to find an easier way to handle performance management by linking it to variable pay. And I personally feel that that's the crisis which we are facing. Just because we couldn't do pay management, we linked it to performance management. Put it onto a bell curve, give some people some benefits, majority people some benefit, and remaining people possibly no benefit. And that created the problem in the system. If you get a response that 60% people are not happy with the performance management, it is the 60% which is the fatter side of the curve. And what hits us is we are not doing much to improve this 60%. Companies which work on this 60% tend to do much better than most of the companies who try to work on the 10% or 15% who are exceptionally good, would remain to be good whether you have a performance management system or not. Another problem which we have with the performance management system, that we use the word talent very casually. Talent is hardly available. Talent is a natural phenomena. It comes very rarely in organization and is limited to not more than 5%. But when we say we are doing talent management, we mistake it for managing the 60% workforce, which is the fatter side of workforce, and which we need to trim, which we need to groom, which we need to put on continuous learning. But because that is the toughest job, we try to actually manage talent and upset them. Most of the organizations actually upset talent.
So I want to ask the panelists here, how many have a forced distribution in their organization? How many of you have forced distribution? Yes? Yeah. Yes? No. So you don't have? You don't have? You have? We've done it. You've done. So, and of course, I think in government you had. In you didn't have. So you still have here two of you who kind of got out of the system. So Swati, do you want to say why did you get out of the system?
So, for those of who you're familiar with Glenmark, as a company, we've grown almost 30-35% CAGR over the last 10 years. And in an organization like that, having forced distribution, we believed would be extremely unfair to the larger organization, because even the worst performer has really outperformed the market. And really, so we could use it as a methodology to see who are better than whom, and use that more for your talent assessments or for various other projects that you may want to do in terms of growth that you can give them, the kind of assignments that you can give
so my
them.
question is, when you
But-
say that, the relative way,
Yeah.
so you do identify and say, this is my top 10% and this is my next,
Not
or
for
or you
assessing
don't?
performance or relating it to results of that performance, but definitely for their career growths, for the kind of differentiated maybe benefits that we want to give them, because we believe that from a performance management point of view, the way we have designed, and I'm trying to find a way of not getting into the competitive part of how we've designed it and yet provide the information, is linking my results to my pay irrespective of what somebody else does in the organization. And I think that's the way we've tried to design it, so everybody has a desire to outperform and gain results out of it, irrespective of how relatively others are doing in the organization.
So, Mr. Dutt, can I hear, you said you have a forced distribution, and what do you feel about... we said that all of the problem stems from the forced distribution. That's what Mr. Ghosh said, and so
yes,
I just...
as a matter of fact, we have it, but we are trying to do away with it because I feel that if there are two aspects to this. I mean, going back a little in terms of what you said, looking at it from a business point of view, the conflict arises in terms of general performance management between the business deliverables and the business compulsions and the way we manage people in terms of performance management. By that, I mean the human side of things, like the human behavior, understanding the human behavior, and how we manage human beings per se in the context of business outcomes and deliverables. So when we do that, there is no denying that human beings behave in a given way, in a given context. And organizations, I feel, and there's a lot of research which is happening even in terms of neuroscience and otherwise, in terms of even outcomes, productivity, so on and so forth. So I think where organizations, including my organization, which we are trying to grapple with, is how do we sort of harmonize this conflict in terms of business deliverables, especially in today's world, and at the same time understand people better in terms of their behavior, how they respond to situations, and so on and so forth. So some of the things that we are trying to do is to delink more effectively, I mean, we all know this, but more effectively, the developmental appraisal vis-a-vis the judgmental appraisal, and sort of give meaning to that rather than just making it a cliched something, so to say, and vice versa. Because we believe that if we are able to set the goals properly, if we are able to inspire people, if you are able to communicate to people in the real sense of the term, because all of this is very colloquial and all of us say this, but when each one of us actually have to implement this in the organization, it is a far more difficult task than what we do.
Since you come from an industry which is now actually quite challenged in terms of, the business outlook and so on, the shipping business, and this very aspect of setting goals, in a market which is challenging, how have you addressed that? Because that's the source of the problem, as you said, that we need to set goals that are, they are in growth businesses. So if you're growing 30% CAGR, I'm saying there's no issue. But if you're not growing that way, I think that's where the issue starts.
Incidentally, we have a very good order book, which, will see us through for at least the next 3 years.
Yeah.
But having said that, we are looking beyond 3 years. We have obviously diversified into other business areas, including as diverse an area as cement or hydropower and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
In the context of people, basically what I just mentioned in terms of understanding the behavior and trying to carve out people practices in the context of the behavioral part of things. Just to illustrate with an example, we try to practice this in terms of a structure that we have put that recently a very, a subject matter expert was saying that people don't remember when they were last praised, but people remember when they were last criticized, So that is something even in terms of, feedback or everything is something that we are trying to build in terms of the fabric of the performance management system.